at this advanced stage, and after doing what I'm doing forever, I have come to a very, very, very hard-nosed opinion. Hire for EQ and promote for EQ. Every damn job in the organization.
Hi, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On this weekly show, you can listen in on my conversations with peak-performing business leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. Every week, I bring you the latest scoop on what these incredible people do to succeed. Together, we explore how they think, what they do, and what inspires them to push their limits. Remember, if you have a question you'd like me to answer about creative thinking, innovation, or collaboration, head over to isoldet.com/question and ask away. If your question is chosen and you leave your URL, I'll tag you and your business to elevate what you do too. And now, let's get on with the show. Hello, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm your host, and I'm really, really happy that you're here. And I am thrilled to welcome this week's guest to the show. Tom Peters is amazing. I've just spent the last few minutes talking to him, and he's amazing. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He's co-author of In Search of Excellence, the book that changed the way the world does business, and it's often tagged as the best business book ever. And I'm not kidding. 17 books and 35 years later, Tom is still at the forefront of the management guru industry. You could see my air quotes there, that he single-handedly invented. What's new? A whole lot. As CNN said, while most business gurus milk the same mantra for all it's worth, the one-man brand called Tom Peters is still reinventing himself. His most recent book is The Excellence Dividend, Meeting the Tech Tide with Work That Vows and Jobs That Last. Tom's bedrock belief is this: execution is strategy. It's all about the people and the doing, not the talking and the theory. In November 2017, Tom received the Thinkers50 Lifetime Achievement Award, and it looks like he's nowhere near done. Tom, I am so thrilled to welcome you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here. I will tell you one thing about the award of that. I'm a great fan of Monty Python, and my wife and I were at a show in Boston, and they were selling T-shirts, and the T-shirt had black T-shirt, big white print, and it said "Not Dead Yet." And I said, I'm really thrilled to have a Lifetime Achievement Award, but I also know what it means. We want to give this thing to you before you're not around. But anyway, there it is.
Now I can't help but I have to say I'm not dead yet. So I couldn't help that. Sorry.
No. I must say, and I, with any luck, I won't turn half your audience off. I went to one of those events where people are asked, if you had to come back as somebody, who would you come back as? And you get Jesus Christ, and you get Winston Churchill, and Clara Barton, and so on. And they came around to me, and I really meant it. I said, mine is easy, John Cleese. There is nobody better as far as I'm concerned, and particularly the Department of Silly Walks.
The Ministry of Silly Walks.
Ministry of Silly Walks.
Yes.
Well done.
My husband is a gigantic John Cleese fan and has met him. And Rich, my husband, used to be a clown in the circus. So,
cool.
Yeah. So that's John Cleese is his bailiwick.
And you know this 1,000 times better than I do. I have read that the hardest job in the world is to be a clown. Everybody thinks a clown means clowning, but it means 180 degrees away from that. Nothing is tougher. I've read that 12 times.
I would agree completely. And it's fascinating to watch him develop his work, because so much of it is about connecting with his audience and really listening to what they're doing and reacting and responding to that in the moment. And it's brilliant training for just about anything else you want to do.
Yeah.
Is try to be a clown first. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And when he listens to this episode, he'll love it.
That. I have a good reputation as a speaker, and getting serious and beyond John Cleese. And this is an arrogant statement. I hope you won't hear many more out of my mouth. I think I am insanely good at reading body language. And to me, the essence of a speech is reading body language. and really getting to, and there are two things I feel: A, reading body language, and B, in a room of 1,000 people, I always give the speech to one person. I find the man or woman in the second row, and they're nodding their head and so on. And fundamentally, they get the rest of the speech. I heard a wonderful story about that. I was doing something in Washington, and the guy who was handling me had been an advanced man for President Clinton. And he said Clinton would go to one of these big events, and he'd be sitting on a stage with 3 senators and 2 governors and talking about something. And, the event is over. And he said 2 out of 3 times, Clinton would stand up, not even say goodbye to the famous people, run up to the 37th row to find the guy who was frowning and try to figure out what had happened. And I just love that. I mean, there are honorable things about Clinton and things that aren't so honorable, but I love that story.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because the idea of giving a speech and talking to the one person translates so well into presentation as a whole. Who are you talking to? And when you're doing that, when you're presenting, when you're giving a speech, and you choose that one person in the second row to speak to, are you looking for someone who wants to be there, or are you looking, like Clinton, for the person who doesn't maybe want to be there and talking to them?
No, when I'm doing the talking, I want somebody who wants to be there. I want positive body language for the simple reason that so they will turn me on, because they're actually the ones who are doing the work. If their reaction is good, then I've always heard that's true of big time theater, that if you have got smiling faces in the front row, it improves the actors and actresses' performance. I'll tell you one other story, and I'm a horrible person this way. I was doing a speech to a bunch of people who ran big insurance agencies. And one of my topics that's incredibly important to me is not gender balance, but simply a lot more women in senior positions. Mm. And I got into this room in the morning with these couple of hundred people, and I did a little introductory stuff, and there was one guy who was from heaven. He had a big smile on his face, and he was easy to talk to, which meant that I could insult him. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, one of the things that really interests me is diversity. And I said, my wife was with me, which was a lie, and she looked at your booklet, and she went through your booklet, which had pictures, and she said, there's not much diversity here. And I said to her, I said, Susan, that is just a crock of crap. I said, we've got tall white guys, short white guys, fat white guys, thin white guys, guys with hair, guys with not much hair, guys with not much hair who are trying to pretend they have. The whole audience was in hysterics, but boy, did it hit home.
And humor does that, right? When we're in that place of being able to poke at it a little, poke at the issue in a way that lets people almost applaud it, that helps.
Oh, God. Yeah, I have no idea what to say about that, for the simple reason that I agree with you 100%. And you tell me whether you agree with me. I think you can get significantly better at damn near anything, like becoming a better listener. On the humor side, you have to be very careful, because there's a lot of stuff that sounds funny that's not funny. Mm-hmm. And I just think that, God or my mother or whomever, gave me some good instincts that way. And it's an incredibly delicate thing.
When you say that, when you say listening, what do you mean? What does it take to be a good listener, in your opinion?
Well, and I don't know what the rules are here.
What do you mean?
No. You can correct me.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
What I was going to say is rule number 1 for good listening is to really give a shit about the other person.
Good rule.
Yeah, you've got to care. The key point in In Search of Excellence. And I said it was the defining moment was when we went down to Hewlett Packard, which has become a giant and gotten rid of most of its good stuff. We found this, there was an HP way, and we found this thing that was the center of the HP way. And it was called MBWA, Managing by Wandering Around. Well, managing by wandering around really doesn't mean managing by wandering around. What it really means is being in touch with people who are really doing the work and chatting with them and getting off on chatting with them. I really, my wife and I, not anymore, at least at this point, spent a month or so in New Zealand, and I was walking our beautiful beach in front of the house, and this is a horrible admission. 75 years old and still thinking about my topic. It made me, it's disgraceful. I mean, take a break, Tom. Anyway, I've been writing and whatever, preaching about MBWA for 40 years, and I literally had an epiphany. And my epiphany was, what's MBWA for? Is it for learning about what people are doing? Yeah, I guess so. Is it for making it clear that you're not around, that you are around? And I said, no, there's one thing that MBWA is. It's fun. It's pure, raw, unmitigated fun for a leader. If you are in the distribution center at 2 a.m. with the gang in the distribution center, and that does not turn you on, and if you don't get a kick out of it, do me a favor. Go back to your office, sit down, write a letter, and resign. If you don't get off on that, and I have seldom felt anything so passionately.
I love that, and I want to delve a little deeper into it. What is supposed to get you off on that? What about it is supposed to be so much fun for a leader?
Being with people, enjoying their backgrounds, learning a little more about them. I think it was based on a George Bernard Shaw quote, but one of the things aimed at leaders that I like to say is, remember, if you have 15 people in your group, every single one of them is dramatically different from every other one. You have to have a completely different strategy of dealing with them. The same is true with kids, obviously, but it's the same point. There's no standardization. And then there is a quote by one of those great Greeks, and I was an engineer, so I didn't study enough Greeks. And the quote, which still just knocks me off my feet, is, "Be kind, everyone is fighting a great battle." And it is just so powerful to me. You come in the morning and you're scowling and you're not terribly nice to people. We've been together, you've been on my team for 7 years or what have you. And I'm a little irritated by that. But the real reality is, which if I knew more, I would know that your mother had just been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and you were just broken up about it. And so it's not, she's bringing a sour mood into the office this morning. It's like, a big load of crap was just dumped on her head, and she's very human about it. And so it's that's, but again, listen, I believe, as I said, I think you can get better at a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But at this advanced stage, and after doing what I'm doing forever, I have come to a very, very, very hard-nosed opinion. Hire for EQ and promote for EQ. Every damn job in the organization. There's a biotech company called Optinos, and the CEO is a guy by the name of Peter Miller. I used this in my last book, and he said, "We only hire nice people." He said, "Okay, I'm in a biotech industry. There is some sexy degree topic that's, some form of molecular biology that's just almost impossible to pronounce." He said, "Guess what? I have a secret. There are in the world actually a lot of people who have that degree. Don't hire the jerks." And, then his one-liner was, I really believe in my group, which I think was a couple hundred people, that, one rotten apple can really make a mess of the barrel. So, and there's one thing, and I wish it had been in my last book, but it was a little too late. It's a wonderful thing, and I urge everybody who is listening to us to look at it. It came initially in the Washington Post, and it is detailed analysis of a study that Google made of its top employees and its most innovative teams. And this was covering a 15-year period that I think ended in 2015 or something like that. They identified 8, this is Google, for God's sakes, where you've got to, code when you're asleep. They identified 8 areas, traits associated with the best, with their best people. Set the top 7 on the list were all soft things. Listens, is respectful, is not a bully, really likes the idea of diversity on the team. And they had an 8-item list, and number 8 and last was STEM. And then they did the innovative teams. And Google is one of those horrible places that grades people as A players and B players, which makes me almost want to vomit on my iPad. I mean, there's no better tool for demotivating 50% of the population. At any rate, they do the same study of innovative teams. And all this stuff was just so black and white. It's unbelievable. The B teams always, be careful, Tom. The B teams almost always outperformed and were more innovative than the A player teams. And again, they did their list of 8. And again, the top 7 were all soft traits. So you can be at Google, you can be at a biotech company, hire for EQ, and for God's sakes, promote for EQ. Do not ever promote any human being into any leadership position who demonstrably doesn't get off on people, who has a record of getting off on people and helping people. Just don't do it.
And scene. That was it. Thank you so much. No, absolutely. I agree completely with everything you just said. And it's fascinating to me when we think about the biotech company you were talking about in your book, that he not only did it from the top down, he did it from sort of the bottom up, if you will. He took prospective hires around to 15 different people, and any one of them could say, no, I don't think this person would work.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And I love that everybody feels empowered to help with these decisions. And I don't know if Google does that, but because they're so huge, but still that idea to me of empower the people who are doing the work to be the decision makers, that is so powerful. And so when we talk about that, when we talk about this idea of empowering the people who do the work to be the decision makers and promoting from within, what would you say the steps to doing that? If you're a leader and you wanted to start that, what's the first step? What's the second step? How might they do it?
And I think you can do this either with the phone or with Zoom, because one has to be careful in making points like this. Get to know each of them, learn about them. My smart aleck but dead serious line is that if you are a leader of a 10-person group, and if you do not know the names of all of the children of those 10 people and what grades they are in school, then you're not my kind of person. But you need to learn, befriend is not the right word. I mean, it's respect, for God's sakes. It's I want to know, I'm not trying to intrude, and you don't have to tell me about your, whatever speeding ticket. But I want, we're trying to do something serious here, and it would really be helpful if we kind of knew each other. And I just want to know more about you. I just want to chat with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to take you to lunch, and I'm going to chat a little bit. There was a guy by the name of Harvey McKay who wrote a management book called Swimming with the Sharks. And when he was hiring somebody, it was in Minneapolis. When he was hiring somebody, the last step was he took them to a Minnesota Twins game, and because he wanted to see how they behaved in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And and you've got to be. I know I'm a broken record, and I don't care. You've got to get off on being around people, and I need to learn about you. I'm not digging into your life story. I don't want any of the gory details, but I just need to know about you. And once I know about all 15 people and maybe create some social situations where they can learn more about each other comfortably, then we can talk about this quote unquote pragmatic stuff. But first of all, we've got to, there was a one-liner from the great football coach, Vince Lombardi, and some people listening to us, including you listening to me, might say it goes too far, but I really like the spirit of it. And Lombardi said, and boy, I do believe this, Lombardi said, you do not have to like your players, but you must love them. And I feel that's the same way. And, obviously love is a tricky thing, but I got to really get off on you as a human being. And then, holy smokes, we can move mountains together. But it's just, I don't know what to say about this. I don't know there's a wonderful book, the name of which I can't remember. It's quoted in my last book, and it's an entire book on hiring. And I've said, relative to a leader, can you honestly say that you are a genuine expert on the topic of hiring, because nothing is more important? I know you're an expert in computer science, or I know you're an expert in materials because of working for that kind of a company. Damn it, you're a leader now. And the issue is the things that you do that are important are people things. And have you read 11 books on hiring? Listening is the same way. I know it was my last book or next to last book where I had a bibliography of 20 books to read on the topic of listening. You can study stuff. You can get better at stuff. You can practice stuff. But I just got to know the team, and we have to get off on each other. And I don't mean, going out and have 7 bottles of wine and 3 Manhattans every Friday evening, though with the wine part, we used to do that at my company, but we were in the middle of wine country in Palo Alto. But it's got to be a group of colleagues. And that doesn't mean I have to be soft on you. I can actually be 10 times tougher on you when we're good buddies than I can when I really don't know your innards and don't know if you're fighting that great battle and so on.
And see, to me, everything you just said, it is a sort of friendship, because even if it's not the kind of friend who's going to help you move bodies, if you will, it's the kind of friend who you watch out for each other, and you've built a community. Yeah. You've built people who want to work together. And it's interesting to me that you said, I don't know what you call it, when you were talking about this being into people. I feel like that's curiosity, being curious about who they are, not intrusive, but curious. And it feels to me like that's one of those soft skills.
Yeah, I like that.
That would be part of that. What do you think of that? What is your thought on curiosity being one of those skills that not only employees need to have about their jobs, but leaders need to have about the people that they work with?
Well, I would say 2 different things. In the old days, I don't know if they do it anymore, the last page of Vanity Fair magazine was a little interview with somebody famous, and they'd ask you 10 questions, and it would be a 1-pager. And Mike Bloomberg was still mayor of New York at the time. And they said to Bloomberg somewhere along the way, what would you say is your most distinguishing trait? And there it was in print in Vanity Fair, 1 word: curiosity. Has to know about stuff, has to know about people. I think you can make people much, much, much better listeners. I think you can train them in everything. I'm not as sure as I was when I was arrogant long ago, 5 years ago. I think I have to mostly hire for that. I think I can see that there's a wonderful article, and I'll make sure we get it up at tompeters.com. And it's about it's a study, not a study, a thing at the University of Pennsylvania. And it's an area group, whatever it is, and they do a lot of home care stuff, and they do sophisticated home care stuff, not just, clean up the house or what have you. And in their industry, the average turnover is 60, I believe this is the correct number, 60 to 77%.
Wow.
It is a very incredibly thorough academic study. They changed their hiring practices, and I assume that 7 out of every 8 people listening to this won't believe me. And that 60 to 77% number in 18 months dropped to 1.7%. And they did it, very academically. They went around to their clients and they asked their clients what they liked and what they wanted in a person and so on. And they came up with this list of traits. And as the woman who is a full professor and MD writing the article said, she said, I always focused on credentials, like college degrees and so on. And she said, I still think it's important, but she said, I was all wrong. And so what they did when they were hiring, among other things, is they had, I don't know what the correct term is, it used to be called, they would have a social gathering of 40 potential hires. And what they were looking for is, does she listen? Does he listen? Does he ask, follow, what kind of a human being are they in a social setting like that? I want to just add one more number. The 60 to 77% to 1.7% is incredible, but also they're dealing with older patients, and this number to me is almost more staggering. The number of hospitalizations of their patient base dropped by 2/3. We know it. Healing is mind over matter to a dramatically significant degree, but it was just an awesome snapshot of this. And as I said, I loved it because it came out of the University of Pennsylvania. It was done very, very sophisticated way. None of this is anecdotal in the least. It's enough hard evidence to sink a ship. So I don't know whether you can train it, damn it. I don't know. What do you think? You've been doing this not as long as I have, obviously, but you've been doing this for a long time. I think I can help you get a little more sensitive, but if you've got a low EQ, I don't think I can turn it into a high EQ.
That's an excellent question. And it's interesting to me. My sister is a doctor. She's head of residency in the dermatology department at the University of New Mexico. And I'm helping her with a project right now. And this is something you might find interesting. We're working on the next crop of residents, how to attract the people she wants as her residents at this one academic dermatology institution in the whole state of New Mexico. And we were talking about, what is it that you want? I asked her, who is the perfect resident? And she said, someone who cares about the patients, someone who wants to work with underserved populations, someone who wants to work in a diverse community, helping people. And I said, then let's ask for it. Let's see if we can attract those people to apply. And it blew her away, and I think it blew her boss away to start thinking in those terms, that we want to reach out for those people who will hear that, working with people, helping people, working with diverse populations, and get sparked and get ignited and inspired. So I don't know if you can train it, but you can certainly look for it if you see.
You can certainly look. By the way, I just want to say, that I know this is an interview of me, but that story alone was, worth the hour of time that I've committed to this. I just love it. And the part I really loved in a way was she and her boss, I'm not sure exactly the words you use, kind of being surprised about it when they thought about it. And, one of my big things is and I've understood that medical schools are maybe moving this way a little bit. Empathy ought to be part of the admissions process, because it is, damn it, true. It's people who are kind of desperate to have the patients in their charge get better. And every point we're talking about could be a 1,000,000-hour discussion. I read an article that made me want to barf a couple months ago. It was a big study done at Massachusetts General Hospital, MGH, which is one of the top ones in the country, and so on. And the nurses now are at bedside with a tablet where they are entering data, and they measured it. And nurse eye contact since the tablets were issued has gone down 70%. And eye contact is healing. And there is, again, enough Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Michigan data to say that it's healing. And then the other part, if you just are in the business of being pissed off at healthcare, which I am half the time, the nurses are entering data 70% of the time or something when they're standing next to you. And then, charming of all things, almost all the data they're entering has to do with billing.
Oh.
Do we who gets charged for the extra straw that she used? I mean, excuse me, I was an old Navy sailor, and several words just went through my mind, which I won't use, but none of them are anything other than truly offensive. Anyway, that's not our point on that one. The point is that I love what your sister is doing. I think professional schools, business schools, engineering schools, med schools, law schools, but engineering, med, and business are my three big targets. They need to put the soft stuff at least equivalent to the hard stuff, and they just don't do it. I spent a lot of time on healthcare stuff on patient safety, and the patient safety things are awful. A couple 100,000 people a year in the United States unnecessarily killed by patient safety problems. And there's a sports term called unforced errors, which means you make the error all on your own. And 90% of the things which caused the unsafe practices were simple things like washing your frigging hands. But it's not the culture. And when there's a guy named Peter Pronovost who invented the checklist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a long story too. But fundamentally, the essence of changing things is empowering the nurse to say to the egocentric doctor, you didn't wash your hands long enough. And whoo, that in healthcare is a big deal. But you need to get that into the culture. But no, I love, just tell her you were talking to some old dude and he said that what she's doing on this thing is one of the most wonderful things he's heard in a long time. And it really is. I just love that story.
I'll let her know for sure. She'll be thrilled. I was just telling her about the fact that I was going to interview you, and I can't wait to listen to that episode because she is a leader. She's sort of been thrust into being a leader over the last few years because she left a practice to become an educator, and she's soaked up your work. So she'll be very thrilled to hear that you like what she's doing.
Oh God, yes. I think it's fat, because it, fits so well with that University of Pennsylvania study where they got the turnover down and the quality of the work. Yeah, I think it's great. Tell her she's got to do it.
Absolutely.
And you and I will. I won't do any of the work. You'll do all the work. But you and I will co-write an article about what she's done.
I will love it. I will do it. Absolutely. It's a date. It's interesting to put the final punctuation point on what you just said about UPenn. Her mentor is the head of the dermatology department at UPenn.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
so it all comes around full circle. And
Yeah, doesn't it?
so I am curious about something that I would like to ask you to comment on. It's easy to measure hard skills. And I don't even like that hard and soft skill nomenclature. It bothers me because soft sounds weaker somehow, and it isn't, you know? And we need to come up with different words, I think, because hard feels like it's active and soft feels like it's passive, but it's not. You can actively listen, you can actively be curious. And you and I should write an article about that too. But this idea of teaching those soft skills or measuring those soft skills and prospective hires and things like that, how do we do it? What do we do to find out? You said something about social gatherings and having people interact and seeing what they do. But then this is sort of a two-part question. What do you do about the shy people? What do you do about the introverts who might be there but might not be as out there with who they are because they are a little bit more shy or introverted? How would you make all of that work to make those hiring decisions?
Well, I will say one thing, and this is not at all a digression because you brought it up, but it's a digression in that it's a recommendation. Anybody who's listening to us who does not read Susan Cain's book with a one-word title, Quiet, is an
Love that
idiot.
book. It's a great book.
Her basic point is extroverts are treated as if they were more physically attractive, that they were more innovative, as they were more everything. And the real reality is introverts, first of all, we ignore them. But when we don't ignore them and we do get them, there is another ton of literature to say that introverts are better leaders than extroverts are. And I think what you're saying does not lend itself to a 90-second answer. But we could at least start with self-awareness. I mean, we're in total agreement on this, and we need to. Well, I think what she needs to do, which is the way I believe in change, and it was what I did at McKinsey that led to In Search of Excellence, is she needs to do throughout the institution is find 10 colleagues who are turned on about this and really start a movement. That's the In Search of Excellence stuff went against all of McKinsey's beliefs, and the big guys didn't want to listen to me. And so I just found people from all around the world, and we started a little revolution of the third teamers, basically, and then ended up with In Search of Excellence. I think you start by getting your leadership team of 5 people together, 6 people, 7 people, and saying, we're really blowing it on this. We're blowing it on this soft stuff, which is the real hard stuff. Let's sit at this table, and we all have high IQs or we wouldn't be in the damned room. Let's make a commitment to each other that we are going to become academic students for the next 12 months of this topic. We are going to have reading groups. We are going to call in executive coaches. We are going to call in full professors in psychology from the University of New Mexico. And let's train ourselves and figure out what we could do and then come up with a strategy. I don't think it is just a matter of getting a good coach or having a little course that says, really listening to people is important. I think the leadership team has got to be committed to making a dramatic strategic change. And if you're the big boss, for those who don't get it, those who don't want to join, give them every opportunity in the world, but then we can't keep them around. But it's in damned hard work. It is a lifetime's work. And I do think it can be done, but only if we make a huge, huge personal, intellectual, emotional commitment to, we're going to stop making these patient errors. We are going to treat the patient. We're going to stop looking at the damn tablet for 70% of the bedside experience. And a group of 5 leaders, and maybe they aren't the top people at all, but they're 5 people who, like your sister again, run some department within the institution, and they, form a band of sisters and go after this topic. But you got to know what the hell you're talking about. I mean, I was trained as a civil engineer, and my PhD is from Stanford, is in business school, is in organizational behavior. And I learned this shit. I was an engineer. I call myself today a recovering engineer. It's not what my training was. And when I was in high school, I was great at science and great at math. And I tend to come at things intellectually. But after you've read your 373rd social psychology book, you might begin to believe that some of these soft traits are the actual hard traits. So, education is always an answer to a lot of things, and reading is always an answer to a lot of things.
You're singing
so tell
my
her
song.
To start a revolution. Tell her to start a revolution, damn it.
She's already doing it. I'm thrilled with the work
Good.
she's doing, and I'm really honored to be able to help her. There's what you just said reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. And I want to get your thoughts on it, if that's okay. It's by Wayne Gretzky, and it's, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." And I would love to get your thoughts on that, because it's about, to me anyway, and I'll give you my thoughts first, I guess. It's about empowering yourself, but also empowering other people to act, to do. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that quote and those ideas?
Well, I have come across the quote, and I once actually said it was you and I are in the same bucket on that one. I said I've got 5,000 quotes, and that's my favorite.
I love
I've
it.
since changed my mind. Ask me in a minute or two about what my favorite is now.
I sure will.
I have said that the essence of innovation is what I call WTTMSW. And what that means is whoever tries the most stuff wins. It's experimenting and trying. There's a problem, and it's the same damn problem we've been talking about for the last half hour. If you want people to be trying stuff, if you want people to be screwing stuff up because they made a little extra effort and it didn't work on the first or second time, you have to have a culture which supports it. And you, among many other things, you cannot get sucked in by the extreme metrics bullshit. I just hate that. And I get to hate that. And I don't know whether you get to hate that, but I'm allowed to tear people apart. I've got 4 degrees from leading institutions, and every damn one of the degrees is a quant degree. So you ain't talking to a philosophy major, dude. I know this stuff, and I know its limitations, and mainly I know its limitations. But, the Gretzky thing is a culture issue. It's a culture issue. I wish it weren't. I wish we could have a 1, 2, 3 formula. It's people who get off on trying things. It's giving somebody a little prize for something that they screwed up beyond belief. But it was really, there was a guy who was a successful Sydney, Australia business person who I've quoted, and he said, "I have 6 words which have made my success." And the 6 words are reward, and listen to these carefully, or our listeners, please listen carefully. Reward excellent failures, punish mediocre successes. That's a strong damn statement.
Wow.
Let me tell you what my favorite quote is.
Yes, please.
Because we haven't got a million years. My new favorite quote comes from a movie director by the name of Robert Altman, and he won a Lifetime Achievement Oscar. And this sentence is out of his acceptance speech, and listen carefully. And director is obviously any leader, any manager, any group of any size. The role of the director is to create a space where the actors and actresses can become more than they have ever been before, more than they have ever dreamed of being. And that, my friend and friends, is the essence of leadership. I once said that my definition of leadership is that the leader has to be in total pain if people are not connecting and growing, and he's got to be angry at himself, and he's got to be sad, and he's got to be working on it, but he's determined that people are going to grow. There was a wonderful thing, a guy who, he was actually chief operating officer of the giant insurance company USAA, and he sent something to somebody who sent it to me, and he graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, and he came aboard a new ship. He was a youngster. He was 23, 24, what have you. And the commanding officer sat him down, and I don't know whether I can say this right because it has to be understood carefully. He sat him down, and let's say his name was Joe. He said, "Joe, I will assume that you can do and do well all of the things associated with your job." He was a supply corps officer on a ship, and it meant, make sure the fuel was done on time and so on. He said, "I will assume that you will do all your work well. 100% of your evaluation will be the degree to which the sailors who work for you come out of the experience of being with you as better people. They got a promotion in the enlisted grades. They went back to school to take a couple of courses." Some youngster who was a 19-year-old dropout, but he said, "That'll be 100% of your evaluation. The stuff, the work," he said, "for God's sakes, you're trained in it. You'll do it well. I ain't interested in that." And I just loved it. I mean, it wasn't like 90-10 in terms of the evaluation. The evaluation will be on how you have helped your people develop. And of course, then my response to that is, and that's the only thing there really is, because guess who does the real work? And it is those people. If they're getting better, your work is getting better automatically.
Rising tide elevates all boats, right?
Yep.
So I know, because I would love to talk with you for the next 14 hours. I realize that we only have
we're down to our last
we're down to our last minute. Yeah. And I if I may ask you 2 more questions, I would love to do that, if that's okay.
And I will try to give you short answers for the first time in an hour.
No, you take your time.
Okay.
So the first question is, what are you curious about right now?
If this were a video, you would have seen behind my head shelves full of books. My mother, God bless her, made me a reader by the age of about 4.5. And I am trying to understand where we're going with the new technologies. I have been reading up a storm on the topic of racial inequity, white privilege, etc. I've probably read 10 books, and I've got another 20 in my stack. And at the age of 77, I'm feeling like the most naive, uneducated human being God ever put on earth. And I worked my butt off during the first civil rights movement. But, and I've been looking at, relative to the COVID thing, and there is one final thing I do want to come back to. I'm a vacuum cleaner. I will read anything. I do think the best training for leadership is good fiction, not good business books, with all due respect to myself and my royalties, because they're all about people. They're all about the damn stuff we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. So a lot of technology, a lot of race stuff. I don't know who's listening to us or what have you. And, maybe this will turn some people off. And if it does, tough. If you don't believe there's white privilege, you're an idiot. That's my one-liner. But that's only the first of my 2 one-liners. And this came, and it's a topic I've worked on for 25 years, but I've been reading a lot about the white privilege. And I thought, for God's sakes, Tom, look at what you've done for the last 25 years and what you focused on. This sentence is clear. If you, and I'm talking to the boys who are listening to us, if you do not think there is white male privilege, you are an idiot. The number of things that have happened to me that are positive that didn't happen to you, or my colleague Shelley, who's listening in on this, are so numerous. Because 90% of the damn stuff is subtle, and I'm just screaming as I am here on that topic. We need to work on this thing, and it is bad. And I'm not even sure it's gotten better in the last damn 100 years. We are getting better on the women's stuff. Certainly, the civil rights movement in the 60s was incredibly important, but there is a long, 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 long way to go, and it starts with awareness. And believe me, I'm incredibly lucky to be here, but the first streak of luck that I had, which was the most important thing, I came out of the womb as a white male American, and the rest of it was easy.
I appreciate your words very much. I really do. Wow. And I don't have any, I could ask follow-up questions, but really, thank you for that. I appreciate what you just said very much.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, it's just, I'm sitting here, and if we had the camera on, I'm tearing up because it's just such a huge thing. Let me add one kind of final thing. I've been doing a lot of stuff on leadership and at the time of COVID. And so I have developed my leadership 7. And my leadership 7 in the age of COVID is: be kind, be caring, be patient, be forgiving, be present, be positive, walk in the other person's shoes. And these ain't normal times. And in these times, well, and the thing that I like to say, which a lot of people agree with me, so it's hardly an original thought, to every leader who is listening to us, what you have done in the last 4 months and what you will do in the next 4 months, regardless of your age, defines the success or the failure of your entire professional life. This sort of thing comes along once every 100 years, so you ain't going to get another one, most likely. And the way you behave right now, and I really think we can go a long way with be kind, be caring. There's one other thing which is associated with that. David Brooks is the New York Times columnist. And there was a column which I just adored. I like a lot of his stuff, disagree with some. But he said, there are 2 kinds of virtues. And the 2 kinds of virtues are resume virtues and eulogy virtues. The resume virtues are: he was an honors student at the University of Michigan or Virginia or Harvard or Princeton or what have you. He was promoted 5 times in the first 10 years. He started his own business, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the resume virtues. And the eulogy virtues are what they say at your funeral. And relative to our entire discussion today, what they say at the funeral is, how were you to other people? That's it. I use a slide in my presentations, and it has a tombstone. And on the tombstone is written $7,382,416.12. That was Joe Jones's net worth on the day that he died. And I said, my ex-wife's father was in the headstone, gravestone making business, so I've seen one hell of a lot of gravestones. And I have never seen a gravestone that has net worth on it.
Again, I don't have anything to say except thank you, because you're absolutely right that the way we treat each other seems to be something we don't pay enough attention to, but in the end is the most important thing. In the end, that's it. It's
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Well, there's a statistical thing that I like to remind people of. Assuming you were not born with a silver spoon and have to work from age 18 or 21 until retirement, which these days is pretty much never. The real reality is you, in the course of your adult lifetime, will spend an incredibly high share of your time with your coworkers, far more than with your family. And I want you to be great with your family, but just remember, most of your awake hours as an adult human being are at work. And as I like to say, piss those hours away and you've pissed your life away. The people, you used a word in answering a question, which I have not used enough, but I'm starting to use with great regularity. And you used the big C word, which is community. A workplace is a community, and it is a community embedded in communities where the people who work for us, live and play and so on. And it's get over it. It's what the hell we do with our adult life, unless your grandfather left you $18 million, for Christ's sakes. And so make the most of it. Just make the most. It's Eulogy. And the thing about it is it's so easy. Well, I don't know. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I just got lucky. One technical thing I will add, which is pretty directly associated, though it goes back to cold statistics. Marcus Buckingham is just an incredible person on the management topic. And he reported in a recent book that the power of positive remarks is 30 times, 30. They are 30 times, 30 times more powerful than negative remarks. Be positive. Do you know what negative feedback is? It is the number one demotivator that has ever been introduced in history. And one other thing I will say about negative feedback. I don't know all of you who are listening, but suppose it was a pretty high number. I know for sure that of that number, whether it's dozens or tens of thousands, not more than 0.5% of you is worth a damn at giving negative feedback. I'm not telling you never to do it. I'm just telling you, frankly, excuse the language, you are shit at doing it. You don't know what you're doing. It is incredibly hard. It needs to be studied with incredible intensity. And yes, people need to have things corrected. But it just, which brings up, and I know I'm going on too long and so on. The other thing I would say about you, my dearly beloved friends, and I am thrilled that you're listening to us because I love this topic, is your self-perception about who you are is wrong. Sorry, just plain wrong. I had a very good friend, and this is so normal, who worked for a giant corporation. He'd done very well over a 20-year period, and he was getting to the point where he would really move into top management. And before they would let him into the top floor, they did a lot of analysis of how he had been as a boss. They did the ultimate 360. It wasn't the, by chance ask 7 questions 360. It was the days and days and days. And what I'm going to say, you'll say it's a bunch of BS and I'm being too extreme, but I'm sorry to say I'm not being too extreme. He thought that the people he worked with and who worked for him really thought very highly of him. They hated him. They hated him. And he wasn't a bullshit artist. He wasn't bullshitting himself. He, honest to God, thought he came across as somebody who was somebody you want to be around. And that finding, there's another little study that I love because it's hilarious, but not funny at all. It was a big meeting with 20 people. And there was a researcher there, or a couple of researchers, and they were taking copious notes. And after the meeting, they went up to the boss and they said, tell me something about the meeting. During this 47 minutes, how many times did you interrupt people? And how many times were you interrupted? And as I recall, his answer was, he said, I was bad. He said, I do think I interrupted people once, maybe even twice. He said, and I was interrupted, I don't know. He said, I wasn't keeping count, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And the researcher said, and he had a little aside on this, it wasn't part of the research report. He said, the guy got the numbers right. He just had them assigned to the wrong thing. The boss had interrupted something like 8 times and had been interrupted twice. And the point of it, my point relative to what I had said before, is the boss wasn't trying to be a bullshit artist. He, honest to God, thought he hadn't interrupted and had been interrupted all the time. Your self-perception is awful. Work on it. Anyway, we don't have much more time. This has been as lovely an hour as I can remember. And I have had fun with 2 incredible people on this talk. You, and at least as important, your sister. Bringing her into the conversation was a real plus. Always nice to have data and have somebody's sister, right?
Absolutely. And
by the way,
she's the best.
You can also tell her that I wrote in the tweet one time that when we're going through this COVID thing, that there should not be one male in the entire country who is allowed to be the chief executive officer of a hospital. Some women are jerks and some men are saints, but statistically speaking, when it comes to interacting with their fellow human beings and caring about it, the female gene pool, is much better at it. So no more female CEOs. Sorry, no more male CEOs of hospitals. And, looking at what we're looking at around the world, we also don't want any more males to be in charge of countries either.
That statistic astounds me. The country one, it just astounds me.
It's hilarious. It's so astounding.
Yeah, I normally have one last little question that I ask, if that's okay, and it's a curious little question. And I think you've given so many little bits of this answer already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And it's this: if you had a plane that could skywrite something that the whole world would see, what would you say?
Well, you're right. I gave you the answer. Be kind, be caring, be patient, be forgiving, be present, be positive, walk in the other person's shoes. How about that?
That's perfect. And I figured that might be something like that. Tom, I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to join me and to talk about these topics. They're so important. I really appreciate you and your thoughts and wisdom. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks to your sister. Okay. You gotta tell her. She's my hero.
I will absolutely tell her, and she will listen to this episode and just love it. Thank you again.
Tell her not to give up, to get tough on this if she needs to, and to change the bloody world, please, or at least the place where she's working, and maybe the whole damn world.
She's on a mission, and I'm sure she will.
That's great. Okay, I've got to run now, and I have really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna sign off at this point.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.
This has been the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm so grateful to Tom Peters and Shelley Dolly for helping put all of this together for this incredible hour. What an amazing conversation. If you've enjoyed this, you will need to go and get all of Tom's books and look up some of his videos on YouTube. I'll put a whole bunch of stuff in the show notes so that you can see it, because he's obviously so wise and has such important things to say today and tomorrow. Please listen to him, find his stuff. You will love it. And until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast, and reminding you that we can all be kinder. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2020. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I send you all of my love.